Hello, folks.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Cult Bar.
So I guess we'll just start out with, well, first of all, what are you drinking? We'll
Uh,
do it in that way.
yeah. Well, I'm drinking, since we're talking about sins of our mother. Yes, Paige, you are in the right place. I'm drinking something called a Dirty Mother because sins of our mother. This is a boozy freaking cocktail, though. It is 1.5 ounces of brandy and 1 ounce of Kahlua, and chilled and shaken and poured out. Baby, is it strong? Okay.
Woo!
I think apropos, you need a strong drink for this special and this
You
cult.
do.
So, how about you?
I am thinking I'm about to have a sinus infection. It's been really windy here, so I'm doing Mother's Remedy, which is basically a hot toddy that I make at home. And oh, I'm blurry. Sorry. So it's lemon, honey, cloves, and a lot of whiskey, and it's hot.
Hot is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you and I have been talking a bit for a while, and I've been promoting some Brothers and Booze about us doing this show, and it's been a kind of a brainchild between Greg, you, and I. And so let's talk a bit about it. Why don't you give us a little intro about you, and then I'll do a little spiel about myself, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'm Renee Pickup, and if you know me, well, if you're watching today, you probably know me from being a guest host on Brothers and Booze. Or you know me as a writer and editor, which is why I was originally a guest on Brothers and Booze. And I used to do a lot of essays about true crime, and I think getting interested in cults is like graduate school for true crime junkies. So that's how I ended up interested in cults. And so what we're going to do, I guess the easiest way to explain it is something that is easily accessible for you guys to watch at home or read at home. And Doug and I are going to watch it, and we're going to bring some perspectives to it, maybe some updates, and have some fun. All right, Doug?
Yeah, fun is the name of the game for this. So, thank you. That's my buddy Jay, who I used to do a podcast called Parental Advisory with. That's been kind of put on hold for a while. But thank you for joining us, Jay. I'm Doug Ziegler. I'm also part of the Brothers and Booze crowd. I'm co-host with Greg Washington most weeks. And yeah, my things with cults is just like I am fascinated how people get to the headspace there, and I want to explore that. And you and I have talked about this for I think several years, where we see, hey, have you seen this, or you talked about this, and it just there's a natural evolution for us to talk about it publicly. And we want to do it live, so we get people comment and ask questions. So yeah, I'm super excited to do this with you. So thank you for going on this journey with me.
Well, and thanks everybody who's like giving us a shot on her first time out for doing this with us, because be gentle.
Be gentle, please. So that's the intro. So I think first what we will do is we're going to do a little bit of cult news. So Renee, why don't you take it away on our cult news to start off?
Yeah, so every month when we come in, we just want to give you an update on something that's going on in the world of cults that may not be directly related to the cult we're covering. So today we're covering the documentary Sins of Our Mother, but this month happens to be the anniversary of the Jonestown Massacre, which I think anybody who's interested in cults has heard of Jonestown Massacre. Prior to September 11th, it was the most American citizens killed at one time. So that's pretty heavy stuff. And it all got kicked off because, and someday we're going to do Jonestown, but it's not a first show topic at all.
No. No. Or just one episode.
Right. We'll take like 6 months. I don't know. Anyway, the short version is that some people who left the cult basically were in a custody battle with Jim Jones. He had a habit of taking custody of cult members' children, and they wanted their kid back. And that resulted in a congressman flying out to see what was going on. And long story short, he was murdered as he was trying to leave. And that was kind of the kickoff point for Jim Jones to fulfill these prophecies that he had been selling people about how the government's going to come and take their kids. One of the things I think is the biggest misconception about what happened at Jonestown is it's called the Jonestown Massacre, not the Jonestown mass suicide. And the reason is because most of these people were actually forced to take the poison. And those, they actually found like needle holes in people. They were injected with it. They didn't drink it willingly. And some people were just shot. So this was definitely not a situation where everybody just went along with what Jim Jones wanted. It was mass murder, and then he killed himself. So that's a really light and airy way to start the show, don't you think, Doug?
Warms the cockles of our heart, yes. So, oh man, heavy stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's was it 40 years? That's
Oh boy, I just closed the window that had my notes on it.
yeah.
It's
I'm
over
sorry.
50 years, I think.
Yeah, that's been a long time. That's kind of like I'd say kind of the granddaddy of all modern cults. I think for me, I mean, considering just how massive it was and kind of how synonymous it is with cults now.
It actually kicked off the whole movement of cult deprogramming too, which is a whole different thing. We should do a show on that because that stuff is not as cool as it sounds.
No. Yeah, I've seen some things on that, and that just it's a messy process. So yeah.
Fun fact about that: the founder of that movement was a guy known as Black Dynamite. Right, coolest name ever. Anyway, he was a complicated man, to say the least.
I'll say that was like dude, fucking Black Dynamite, really. Okay, now I'm gonna try to figure out a way to get that name adopted to me, except that probably doesn't work so well. But anyway, Doug Dynamite. That sounds almost like a porno name, so maybe not that either. But so next, let's do a little summation of what we're talking about tonight, right? So we decided on Sins of Our Mother. This is just on Netflix. It is a 3-episode show, but it covers Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. I mean, there's a cast of characters. It's not just them, but they're the central focus. Basically, she was leader of a doomsday cult, kind of got dubbed the Doomsday Mom, where she kind of did a derivative off the LDS Church to make her own little cult with this Chad Daybell guy. And as of right now, she is standing trial for first-degree murder of her kids, 2 of her kids, as well as her conspiracy for her one ex-husband. She has been married. This was her 5th husband, which no judgment on that, but 5 husbands is a lot of husbands. 5 wives would be a lot of wives. And then also Chad Daybell's deceased wife. So they're standing in a joint trial coming up in 2023, I believe. It is a harrowing set of things to watch, and it's short. It's 3 episodes. So it's like, Chris, how about you're just like, how the hell did we get here? Like it went so fast. And it is, I wouldn't say necessarily, it's not a rough watch until the last episode, because when they find things, that is when it gets really rough. It's not easy to watch. Some of them are a lot harder to watch than this, but the endings are really rough. So we're going to discuss that, how, the way it evolved, maybe how it evolved. It again, like my mind doesn't really work in those sort of capacities. So like that's the thing that fascinates me about it, is I just don't understand how you get there. Like I'm not a rabbit hole person, and some people are. So
This is a rabbit hole. Actually, Doug, we totally forgot our lengthy trigger warning.
Yes.
So I'll take it real quick. So I think every episode is going to have a trigger warning for spiritual abuse. Like that's what a cult is. So if you've experienced religious trauma, just use your better judgment. And if you've got to kick off, your mental health is more important than our show 100% of the time.
Agreed.
And then this one in particular, it deals with domestic violence. It deals with child sexual abuse. It deals with sexual assault. It deals with gun violence. I think I got them all.
I am trying to think of any others. I mean, there's, like you said, child sexual assault is kind of one of the bigger ones. Fortunately, that is not gone into in great detail, which I appreciate. They didn't need to. That can be with a broad brush. We get the hint. So apologize for not giving you guys trigger warning first. But yes, the show, you're going to run into that pretty much every episode. We're going to make sure we put trigger warnings every time. All right. Well, that's kind of the summation. I mean, we're going to dig into the weeds on it, to dig into the weeds of it, of course, because we got a lot to really discuss. I mean, man, where do you want to start? I mean, I think we have to start at the beginning, obviously, but where do you want to start in that process?
Well, I guess, I'm going to suggest we flip some of these points, because I think when we want to get into what we have for next is actually after we discuss how this stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
So Doug brought something up. I was getting ready to talk about how the mainstream Mormon, these people, it's not clear in the documentary if they are active in the mainstream Mormon church throughout this journey or not. It kind of seems like maybe they are, which is kind of hard to believe, because I would think that they would be excommunicated if their church leadership was aware of it. But I want to talk a little bit about the Mormon church, the mainstream Mormon church, LDS, their beliefs, and how this kind of opens people to this kind of thinking. So I don't know how many people are aware of the many, many, many Mormon offshoot cults. There are tons. Warren Jeffs, that whole thing. If you watch the show or read the book Under the Banner of Heaven, that's a different group. And there's tons of them. And from the start of the church, there have been offshoots. And one of the reasons for that is that the church is based on the idea that this regular guy can talk to God. And so people get that idea that that's possible. And even from the early days of the church, they were saying, well, no, God's talking to me, not you, and arguing about who got the hotline, I guess. And then another thing that's really interesting about Mormon church, and for the record, I guess I should disclose I'm an ex-Mormon. So, if you are Mormon and you disagree with what I'm saying, this is just my opinion. But another thing is that the Mormon church does not believe in the Trinity like a lot of Christian churches do. They believe that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are three different entities, and that the Holy Spirit talks to you all the time. So if you're close with any Mormons, you can hear them tell these stories that the Holy Spirit told them what to do in every instance, from I couldn't find my car keys to this is how I knew that I was supposed to marry the person I married. This is how I knew that this thing was wrong and this thing was right. It's very centered on this idea that there's what they call a still small voice that's going to be whispering in your ear and literally speaking to you. And people will interpret that differently, but some people, like maybe Lori Vallow, interpret this as she has prophecy. She knows things that other people don't know. And the second thing, and I apologize if you haven't watched the documentary, because some of this is not going to make sense. And also, if you watch the documentary, it probably still isn't going to make sense because it's really wild. But she became really obsessed with the temple. And one of the things I think is really interesting about that is, Doug, you mentioned she was married 5 times. In the Mormon church, that is super unusual. Ideally, a Mormon woman marries a man in the temple, which is different from a church wedding. They are sealed together for eternity, and all their children are sealed to them as a default. And that is how you get into the best heaven. Mormons believe in different levels of heaven. And divorce, you can get divorced on paper. It's really hard to get a temple divorce. And men can be married in the temple more than once, but women cannot. So it's the polygamy thing. So spiritual polygamy still exists in the Mormon church, but polygamy on earth doesn't. We could get into the weeds. We could do a whole show on what Mormons believe about marriage. We don't have time. But so I do think it's interesting that she became obsessed with the temple, because I've had experience with Mormons in my family where most of us are ex-Mormons, some of us aren't, where there's like this really strong urge to make sure that everybody gets back in good standing with the church so we can all go to heaven together. And you kind of feel like your salvation affects your family's salvation, because you've got to go together, right? And so my speculation on that is that might have been part of where she became obsessed with the temple and going to the temple a lot to do temple service. But I don't know. They don't really get into what she was doing in the temple, or if she continued to be allowed in the temple after this stuff started, because you actually have to go and be interviewed by your bishop and get a special slip of paper, and they don't let anyone in. They don't even let any Mormon in. So there's some weird stuff about that, and it's not explained in the documentary. And as an ex-Mormon, I've only been to the temple one time, and I didn't do any work. It was for an opening, and I still had to get the special paper that said I was allowed to go. So I don't know. That in and of itself, as an ex-Mo, really like rang so many alarm bells. Like, what is going on? But she did believe she could talk to God.
She talked to Moroni.
And the angel Moroni, who's the angel, if you're not up on your Mormon history, who gave Joseph Smith the alleged gold plates that became the Book of Mormon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's like, I guess, the Mormon background on where Lori Vallow started before she decided that she needed to start a podcast. Just because you start a podcast doesn't mean you're starting a cult, for the record. But she started a podcast to start a cult. She did. Maybe we need some regulation on that. I don't know. Anyway, but that's the background of like kind of the Mormon beliefs that tie into what she's doing, because what she was doing very quickly deviates even from what I might consider, or you might consider, the weirder LDS beliefs.
Yeah. It's something like, I don't know a lot about Mormonism, or, how the religion works. I know some very surface level stuff that, of course, I hear all the kind of stuff that seems a little bit out there and whatnot, and then that stuff always sticks with you because it's unusual. So like hearing her when she started talking about the temple, and you mentioned how you have to have a good standing with your families, you can all go to heaven. I don't think that's specific to Mormonism. I've seen that in evangelical Christianity. I've seen that all across all kinds of religions.
What's unique about that is that Mormons believe in 3 different levels of heaven.
Yeah,
and you cannot get to the good heaven. There's like heaven, medium heaven, and good heaven. And you can't get to good heaven unless you are sealed in the temple.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm trying to figure out exactly where to go with all this, because there's a lot of unpack. So, I think we should start. They kind of kick off into where they mentioned, they've kind of glossed over her first 2 husbands.
Yeah, all we really know is that her son felt they were abusive.
Yeah, and that's all we got to hear about that. And then there's the 3rd husband, who is Joe Ryan, and I didn't catch his last name. And that's kind of, I think, where this really starts to turn. Like for Lori Vallow, is he was fairly young, I think, and he told us that Colby Ryan is her oldest son, who is from a different marriage, from her second marriage, I believe, or her first. I can't remember which. And then he revealed to his mother that husband number 3 was sexually abusing him.
Right.
And that led to her leaving him. And, good for her, because you don't stay in that stuff. So at least she did the right thing by her son there, and good.
I might debate that a tiny bit. Not leaving, but what really struck me in the documentary is he said he felt at fault for her taking this turn because he told her that. And I think, wow, what did she say to make him believe that?
I hadn't even considered that, but yeah, he did say that. And I hadn't even considered like how the blame shift came there, Yeah, fun. So, but that happened, and then she meets Charles.
Yes.
Which is Charles Vallow. That's her 4th husband, I believe.
Yes.
And it starts to really unravel. That's where you talked about they get in the house, and all of a sudden all the pictures are being replaced by pictures of the temple, and like they're getting more and more kind of closed off or walled in to the LDS stuff.
Now, Doug, do you remember because I remember how her son talks about the Mormon Church, and he's an ex-Mormon, so it's kind of different. Because a lot of stuff they were talking about just sounds like a normal Mormon house to me. Do you remember if they mentioned if she had always been Mormon, or if she converted at some point?
I was under the impression that she always was. I think I remember with the first husband, like it was like right out of high school. And I think that was something where she was always Mormon, but I think just
Oh, yeah.
as thing, I believe then like she just kept getting more and more because she'd had three basically really crappy marriages,
Right.
and obviously the third one was like incredibly bad because there was abuse happening to her kids. Um, oh, and before we move on to the third one, that's where we off of the third one. That also involves her brother
That's the fourth
Alex.
husband.
What's that?
That's the
That was
fourth husband.
no. He also remember he tased the third husband,
Right.
and
Goodness.
so he tased the third husband when he found out that he had been sexually abusing his nephew, and threatened to kill him. So Alex Cox enters the fray here, and this is Lori Vallow's one brother. She has another brother, Adam, and then there's a sister that is mentioned but is never really put into the documentary much.
Right.
But Alex features very prominently throughout the rest of the story. So
We'll get to it.
yeah, so Charles Vallow and her are together for a pretty substantial amount of time, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm rambling a bit here, but that's where so they
It sounds like there's some in comparison to what she experienced before and what her son experienced before, there is some domestic violence.
mm-hmm.
Tension mounts in the home, and he's short-tempered, and there's some low-level stuff. Maybe stuff that you might consider like would have been acceptable, like in the 60s or 70s, people would have been like, meh. But today we're like, ooh, get out of there.
Yeah. But and I forgot to mention with the third husband, there was also a daughter born, Tylee.
Oh, that's very important.
So Tylee is very important to the story as well. Tylee and Colby were very tight. And I think Colby was like 6 or 7 years older than her. And then after she marries Charles Vallow, they adopt JJ. Now, JJ was actually Charles' nephew. Did you catch that in the documentary?
I think I did, and they didn't really get like.
It didn't go too far.
It always strike me as weird because I've known people who come into guardianship or adopt a family member,
mm-hmm.
And it's usually something really bad happens to kick that series of events off.
Yeah,
and
they made it sound like the grandparents were taking care of the kid because the one kid couldn't take care of that child, so
right.
They just adopted him. And you know, JJ is 6, I think, or something to that effect. He was pretty young, so it was a pretty big age difference between Tylee and also Colby.
They're almost like evenly spaced.
Yeah, pretty much. And Tylee really takes to JJ. That's kind of, you know, there's one part in the documentary where she says, "Are you saying something about my kid?" Like, you know, pretending that she was just, you know, silly little stuff. So yeah, that is where we're at when we get with where things are, you know, they're starting to come unravel, but not really. And then it just kind of goes completely off the fucking rails. So yeah, you want to take a little bit of the helm here and explain it from your point of view?
There's another thing. So I say it sounds like there was domestic violence because, to be honest with you, Doug, I don't know if we can trust that account. And the reason why is so we get to this point in the documentary and she starts telling people that her husband is not her husband anymore and he's possessed by a demon, and the demon's name is like
Ned Snyder.
It's Nick.
Ned Snyder.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Okay, I got to tell you, this is not funny. But all of the demons have like super normal names, and I it's that particular element is funny. None of the rest is funny, but that element is funny. It's not like
have some evil, really sounding.
Yeah, it's like
ball or something like that. And like, no, I'm Ned.
So she starts telling people this, and there is a point at which he becomes really seriously concerned for her mental health. But unbeknownst to him, she's gone ahead of him and told everybody that he has cheated on her. And it seems clear from the documentary. And again, this is my opinion. I don't know these people. It seems clear that wasn't true. That was something she did to discredit anything he might say about her being crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And you will see going forward as we get a little farther just how calculating and manipulative she is. So I completely agree with that statement.
That part really actually broke my heart because it seemed like he was desperate for help. And there's even a point where they're separated and he's at the house and he just wants to see the kids and know that they're okay. And, she smooth talks the situation to get, she's supposed to be, I don't even know how to explain this because it made me so angry. The cops tell her she can voluntarily go in for a psych eval and that'll make this all go away. And she sweet talks him to the point that they're giving her tips on how to avoid an involuntary hold if one gets assigned to her.
Yep.
And that was just, oh,
Yeah, I will say I was a little trying to understand how a husband could just say, I want this person to have an involuntary hold psych eval. Like how is one person being like, give that person, like, I was a little, that felt very patriarchal to me.
I don't think that that's the whole story. So this is the thing I noticed, and just like the things I know about the Mormon church, watching it, they left so much out. And I knew that because I know the background. So I think they left some elements out of that because it is so difficult. You can get a wellness check on somebody just by saying, I need a wellness check, but you cannot get somebody put on a hold. You cannot force somebody into a psych eval unless you have evidence, unless you have some good reason. And I think actually they mentioned that he was trying to send evidence of these really upsetting and delusional things she was saying to her family members, but they weren't opening the emails because, he's just trying to trash talk her because he wants to be the villain because he cheated. So I think there's probably there's more information that the documentary didn't include.
Yeah, and later on, when Colby's wife Kelsey goes through emails, she kind of finds some of the stuff that they had just ignored. So there's more to that bit with what was in those emails. And yeah, everybody was just kind of and everybody and her family was just discounting him because she kept, he's a cheater, he'll say anything. So, I mean, would anybody, if you didn't know what was going on, you would probably do the same thing.
And it's their family member, right? So, yeah, you go, well, why would my daughter lie to me? Why would my mother or my sister lie to me? It must be true. I'm just not going to bother opening the emails. I don't need his side of the story. And unfortunately, that was the wrong thing to do in this particular situation when it's probably the right thing to do 90% of the time.
Yeah. And the other part is the sweet talking was you watched her where he had basically he was desperate to see his kid. She took his kid and wouldn't let him see his kid. And JJ, the youngest one, who, he was a special needs kid. He was autistic and, he was fairly high functioning. I think that's the incorrect term nowadays.
It is. Yeah.
But he wanted to see his kid, and she kind of kept him away, and then he kind of followed her to school, which is weird but desperate times kind of thing. And he took her purse, and when she was talking to the police, if we got your purse back, would that make everything okay? That was where it kind of started, where they were just kind of but the thing is, when I was talking to Jill about this, I said, but kind of don't you want your cops to believe the women first? Most of those cops go to a domestic violence situation, and overwhelmingly it's the men that are the problem.
And the other thing is you would say, well, kids are involved, right? And so you want them to follow up and the kids are involved. But in that particular situation, the daughter was laughing along. Oh, well, we just really want the purse back, And so you get this sense that everything is fine in that house and this guy is the problem.
Yep.
And, again, 90% of the time that'd be the right call. And it just wasn't. And it's that is so heartbreaking. Those scenes were so hard for me to watch because you go into the documentary knowing how it ends, and nobody involved in this situation did while it was happening. So what do you do?
Yeah. And there was even a point where Lori Vallow's mom, Janice, was like, well, why would Tylee lie for her mom? She wouldn't do that. And I'm like, if you watch those videos, she's definitely lying for her mom. She's terrified. So, yeah.
Parental alienation is a thing, and it's not actually her dad either. So you don't know what's being said behind closed doors in that house where the dad doesn't have access to the kids. You don't know if she's I mean, I get the sense that there was probably like some boundaries crossed with those kids as far as what was shared and what shouldn't have been shared,
Hmm.
just because it was this really unstable, multiple husbands, mom needing support kind of thing. She could have been telling Tylee things that would make her think we got to keep him out. We got to keep him away. He's dangerous. You just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's the hard thing when you're looking at how this teenage girl was behaving.
Yeah, and then also in the midst of all that is you mentioned her podcast, which I think was called like Feel the Fire or something to that effect. And that kind of brought her into this whole like really kind of doomsday kind of thought process, even more so, where they went to a conference, and the conference name is escaping me, but that's where she meets Chad Daybell.
Right.
And in the middle of all this kind of upheaval with her fourth husband is this guy who writes a series of books that are really apocalyptic stuff and how you're going to survive all that stuff. And that rings a bell with her. And now there's that going on in the background. So, yeah, I mean,
And the other thing is, too, is I didn't mention this when we were going over the Mormon background because I just like kind of forget what people don't know. But
yeah.
the Mormon church is really all about that. You have your 6-month supply of food and water in case basically, I mean, they wouldn't say it like this, but basically in case the second coming happens, or in case you have to pick up and go, because in Mormon history, there was a lot of picking up and going to another place when they got ran out of a place. And, again, depending on if you're Mormon or if you're not, why they were picking up and going is in debate. But there is a lot of that, like we are in the end times. And again, that's not very unique to the Mormon church, but kind of the approach of gathering supplies and all. It's like prepper light. And it seems like when she met Chad, it went prepper hard.
Prepper hard.
Yeah.
Renee, thank you for the innuendo comments. That just made my night.
Prepper dark? I don't know. Light, dark, heavy? I don't know.
Prepper heavy. Yeah. So, Chad Daybell is a whole different element to this because he's whole hog into the whole thing. He really is all about here come the end times.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how you get ready for it. Like he was all in. And they talked a bit about Lori doing the stockpiling of like flour and toiletries and just being and toothpaste and like things like
I just wonder though, it's really, again, I wonder, was she doing it like a Mormon or was she doing it even more? Because a Mormon, you're supposed to have 6 months of everything. They get special dispensation to get like 6 months worth of meds at a time. They like as a religious thing. Not every
religious exemption.
Yeah. So this is a weird story, but my uncle went a long time without health insurance, and he was diabetic and he needed insulin. And someone from the church had just had their prescription changed, and so they were able to give my uncle 6 months of insulin because they had it.
Wow, that's not a bad thing. That's actually great that your uncle got to take advantage of that. But
right, but it's just that's how intense some Mormons can be about the 6-month stockpile. So it's like, was it 6 months because she became a hardcore Mormon, or was it like way beyond that, or was it somewhere in the middle? Or I've been out of the church for a long time. Are fewer Mormons really taking it that seriously? So it did stand out. I don't know. They didn't really give you enough information to gather.
Yeah, I will tell you that there's someone that's in my family that is an evangelical, and they practice a lot of that same stuff. When they moved houses, the amount of stuff they had just squirreled away in their basement was pretty prodigious. It was not hoarder-esque, but it was because it was very organized. But it was like, holy moly, you guys are ready.
I really have some storage, but what's funny about that is that it took me a really long time to come around to the idea that you could have like extra rice and beans and flour and not be crazy, because I left the Mormon church and I was like, no, only crazy Mormons do that. And then, when COVID came and I had extra stuff and didn't have to pay these insane prices, I was like, whew, I'm glad I got over that.
Yeah, I think having some stockpiles of stuff is, I think, normal. I mean, we have a pantry and we stockpile with stuff. For me, I have to stockpile it with like no salt added canned vegetables because I have to watch sodium because of my heart condition. So like I have boatloads of that stuff, but that's because it's not a common item. So when I see it, I kind of hoard it. But yeah, it's not to that point. You know, there's also the idea of like having a go bag. I don't know if that's something that was in a Mormon religion. Like that's something that my wife had to do as a younger evangelical. So just have a bag ready to go in case they're coming for you, I guess. I don't know.
Thing that's interesting to me about like the Mormon stockpile thing is that it was like, well, what if you just had to get up and go one day? But they don't ever really talk about a go bag, and they talk about a 6-month storage. It's like, well, I can't carry 6 months of canned goods on my back, man.
Here, get your rental truck. Here we go. 6 months on the go.
Anyway, that was a bit of a bird
nice sidetrack. Yeah. Hey, we're allowed to sidetrack.
Yeah, it's our show. We do what we want.
Yep. So we're at the Charles Vallow bit where I think where he calls the police, right? And they come. And now he confesses, he says that my wife's kind of lost her mind. Now, again, like the problem is with cops, they experience domestic situations like this. And the guy's always going to say that his wife's nuts or something like that. And that's what they see all the time. But they also see that both the cars are gone. Nobody's in the house. They kick in the house. Like nothing's in there. It's or stuff's in there, but like he just doesn't have access to his things. Like she went so far as to have her brother take his truck from the airport, so he didn't have a truck to get home, and like it threw all the stuff out of the house. Like
I will say one thing where the cops kind of, I think there was a detail that they could have pinged on is like he took her purse, she stole his car.
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah, like
Grand Theft Auto, purse snatching.
I mean,
the scales of justice.
It's like obviously something warranting some more questions, at least, right? They're stealing from each other. They're like, I don't know.
And later on, she takes his rental car.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so she had a thing for taking his vehicles, I guess. So,
God.
So that's where we get into her going to the police station. They give her the whole spiel about how to avoid involuntary. What was the word you used?
Involuntary hold, psych hold, yeah.
Yeah, involuntary psych hold. Like I said, she's very good at playing this whole thing. Like she said, I like my purse. I miss my lip gloss. Like ha 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 ha, making very light of the subject. Now, here's where I'm going to draw on your experience as a female presenting person is. That seems like something making light of something in a dangerous scenario is kind of almost like a masking thing.
So yes. So, okay. So part of what's difficult about this whole documentary is people who watch the news or follow cases or watch true crime stumble a lot as they say, I wouldn't act like that if that happened to me. And the truth is you have absolutely zero idea how you'd behave if it happened to you, right?
True.
So, no, we know everything. We know how it ends, at least.
Right.
So I think it's fair to say, like, she's being manipulative. But if you saw that out of context of anything else, you could say this is somebody who's been in this traumatic situation and she understands how crazy the whole thing is and she just really wants to get it over with and wants to make a good impression on the cops so that they can just get it over with already. And I've definitely seen people behave. I've behaved that way when someone has done not, stolen from me or the things that she was, implying he was doing, but I've definitely laughed it off. Oh, ha, yeah, look how crazy this situation is. Ha, 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 I just really want to get out of here and get some Starbucks. You know what I mean? Like it is normal. So but again, we know where this all goes. And so we know that she was probably doing that on purpose.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I didn't want to go too far into that, but I think that as I get older and I realize a bit more about the world that I don't inhabit, like I'm not a female presenting person, so I don't have to worry about the gazillions of things you folks do. Like I could see that being a mask used as like humor to kind of deflect the seriousness of the scenario. So I could see how that will the cops would kind of understand it. Like I said, listen, I'm not a cop person. I'm the first person to say that, but
Yeah.
I could see where they could stumble on that a bit, not knowing what was really going on, because here's your 2 points of view. You have this woman who sounds very calm and this guy who sounds like my wife's lost her mind. Yeah, you're probably going to err on the side of somebody who appears calm.
And I've worked in customer service, and I've worked in some high stress jobs where you have to deal with a lot of insanity.
Mhm.
And I think there's an element of when you know a situation's crazy, but the people in it don't, it's really difficult because you're like jaded to it a little bit, you know?
Mhm.
And when you meet the person who's like, look, I know this situation's crazy, it does endear you to them.
Mhm.
And it does make it seem like, well, this is the sane person in the situation
Yeah.
because they're acknowledging how crazy everything is. And yeah, it works. And it did. It worked.
Yeah. Well, progress to that. Now this really escalates. So next we get Charles Vallow going to pick up JJ to take him to school. So yeah, now he comes, and I think it's the first episode ends, and all you hear are gunshots,
Mm-hmm.
which we're like, okay, we kind of know who got shot, but all right, let's get into it.
Well,
And then the thing we hear is Alex Cox, Lori Vallow's brother, calmly calling the police, telling them he shot his brother-in-law in the chest because they were arguing, calm as a placid lake, like just not a ripple of anything. Yes, my name is Alex Cox, blah, blah, blah. And I shot him. And then they asked him to do compressions. I don't know how to do that. She told him how. Later, we learned he never did any of that, which, yeah, of course, he's not going to.
right.
And so the cops, which I had, here's the thing: when they get to the scene, he comes out, no weapons, not fussing. He's talking on the phone to the 911 operator. They sit him down the curb, and the first thing cop goes, "Scene secured." You haven't even been in the house.
Yes.
Like, what are you doing? Nothing's secure. Like,
Here's the first element of this story where there are details that just do not make sense no matter what perspective you take.
nope.
Alex Cox says, so there was the story is that Lori and
Tylee.
Charles, sorry, Lori and Charles were having some kind of argument, and she's like, I got to get these kids out of the house to protect them from this and calm them down. I'm going to get McDonald's and take JJ to school, and everything will be fine when I get back. And Alex says after she left, they get into it, and Charles hit him in the head with like a hammer.
No, it was, he said Tylee, the daughter, came out with a bat.
Oh,
And
right.
then Charles took it from him and then hit Alex with the
Right.
bat.
That's why they left.
Which, if you get hit by a fucking bat, you're not just going to have a little tiny ding, like a little scratch in the back of your fucking head. You're going to be laid out. And it was an aluminum bat.
Agreed, but then he did have a wound on his head, and I'm like, what? Where did it come? What happened? That his story is correct. It obviously is not, but there's these things that come up in this story, and we'll get into it even deeper later. But like, his story is so obviously false to the point that it was still being investigated when he died. Right? Like, it's just so obviously not true.
Right.
But there's some weird tiny element of truth in it because he had a wound on his head.
Mm-hmm. I believe he has self-inflicted that somehow. Like, I don't think it was.
I wouldn't ask any of these people.
Yeah. And, you know, and then the story changes too. He's like, so it was about 20 minutes ago. And then, like, the cop does a tricky thing where he asks him, so how long did your sister leave? It was like an hour ago. And like, so he tries to trick him into saying the wrong time, which he doesn't. He says 20 minutes. But then he changes it that Tylee's there, and then like, she was there when they first started, and like the story changes like 3 freaking times.
And again, do I know how I would react in that situation? No, I've never been in a situation like that in my life. But she returns, right? and she talked to the cops. And I'm just saying, if this situation is so bad, my daughter feels like she's got to come out and hit her stepfather with a baseball bat, and I've got to flee the home, and this situation continues to get worse after I leave. I'm not coming back calm. I'm not just dropping my kid off at school and coming back to see what happened while I was away.
Yeah, they bought the son Burger King and then went and got flip flops for the daughter, and I'm like, in the dead ex husband's rental truck. Like she
Right.
took
So
his
they
rental
knew that he
truck.
couldn't leave.
Like what kind, like if you're like, I need to get out of here, like are you're taking the guy's keys for his rental truck and taking his car? Like what the fuck is that? Like
Just
nobody
running
does that.
errands. Yeah. And
You would grab a familiar set of keys. And you wouldn't look for something weird or new. You'd be like, grab the most comfortable. It's my car keys.
or if you grab the first set of keys and it's his, you're in a state of mind where you're in a fucking hurry to get out. Like, excuse my language. Like it's just, if you're in shock and you're like, okay, I'm the kind of person who's calm under pressure. I got to get my kids out of this situation. Then you're taking your car. And if you're too freaked out to do that, you're not just going and running errands. Like there has to be some sense. And there just wasn't any in her story.
Yeah, and she was all super calm. And what was interesting was the daughter was fairly calm. But I think that was partially the cop that was questioning her was like very, oh, you're 17, you're old hat at driving that. Like he was doing a job of trying to make sure she was calm. I actually thought that was actually quite a good job by the police officer to try to. He was thinking of it. This is a kid, and this happened in their house. So I'm going to try. So that actually weirdly would give him props for being sensible about that. But then they take him to the police station, you know. Then they release Alex, like, oh, we're satisfied. That's a self-defense thing.
This is so weird to me
They
because
just release him. Just yeah, good luck.
yeah, and I don't know what it's like in Arizona, and I meant to look this up and I didn't, because I didn't really know what keywords do you search for this, but
Yeah.
in a lot of jurisdictions, you have to prove self-defense. You do not just the cops don't go, yeah, it looks like self-defense, and you go on your merry way. You have to prove it. You often have to prove it in court. And they kind of just were like, meh. And then later came back to it and went, I don't know, it looks kind of fishy. Maybe we should investigate. And it's like, no, you definitely should have investigated
Then
right then and there. Like, I am 100% in favor of using deadly force to defend yourself if that is necessary and it's you or the person who's trying to hurt you. I am not okay with that being something I can just say and everyone believes me.
and wave a magic wand and you're good
Right.
to go.
It's like, no, if I got killed by somebody and they're like, well, she was going to attack me, I would really love for the cops to look into that.
Yeah. Hey, if I was going to attack somebody and they kill me, then and you investigate it and that's what comes out, fine. Like,
Right.
but this was just like, yeah, you were here. We're going to question you. You sound good, and your sister and her daughter are kind of somewhat corroborating what you're saying. Not really, but yeah, good enough. That's what it felt like. And then it later comes out that I think it was 2 bullet wounds to his face. They said 4 shots at one point.
Yeah, it was like the number of shots didn't make sense, and they were
versus the wounds, and one of them apparently he was on the ground.
right.
So he didn't just go boom boom and then he fell, and then another one later down on the ground. And
I will say this: I dislike that as an argument against self-defense, and this is the weirdest anecdote to prove it. But
okay, let's have it.
I'm terribly phobic of cockroaches.
Okay.
I can't even step on one. I would literally rather die than step on a cockroach, but I cannot be in a room with a cockroach either. And I was in the Marine Corps in very old barracks that used to be the kitchen for the barracks. And so they'd come out of the grout in my shower.
Oh.
And I'm a fucking Marine, and I'm a woman Marine, which means I cannot ever let anybody know that I have like any fear of anything, because it will be taken advantage. I'm in charge of a bunch of guys who think that I should go back to the kitchen, whatever. Ironically, lived in the old kitchen. So we had these things, and this is in Virginia. This is right outside Richmond. This is the South. These guys were big guys. They were not silverfish. And so I kept a can of Raid, and I would kind of just get through it, right? Like I'd kill it, and then I'd work up my courage to scoop it and get it in the trash. And one day, one was on my foot in the shower. And it was like the worst thing that has ever happened to me. And I have been through some shit, okay? I have PTSD from other things. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. This is the level I'm phobic of cockroaches. And I shook it off my foot, and I'm like standing on a chair, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I spray it with Raid, and it doesn't die. Spray it again, and it doesn't die. And I hit it with the boot. But I had to work up, so I had to psych myself up so much to hit it with the boot, because that's contact, that once I started, I couldn't stop. And
Okay.
I mean, in retrospect, it's like embarrassing, right? I'm like, this is like the final scene. I'm the final girl in the horror movie, just but it really was like that. And I think if my life was really in danger and I had to work that up to do that to another human being, I could see losing it in a much bigger way.
Yeah, I suppose so. Except the thing is, it didn't look like a losing it. It was 2 shots that hit him.
And he was super calm. He
Yeah,
didn't
and
go up
he
like,
was.
you know.
Now, some people do get kind of cold in those circumstances where, like I know, like I've never had to kill anybody, and God willing, I will not have to. But like if I ever am at a funeral, I'm either cracking jokes or I am deathly serious. Not pun intended. But like I'm one of the two. I'm not somber. I'm usually just, or I'm cracking jokes like I'm fucking Jim Gaffigan or something, like, because that's like a gallows humor thing. I can cope that way.
And my PTSD superpower is that when everyone else is freaking out, I just turn all of that off. I do what needs to get done, and then later I go freak out or cry or whatever the appropriate emotion is. And so again, you can't ever say how someone should behave. But if it was I freaked out and lost control, then you freaked out. And if it's like, well, I'm a person who's calm under pressure, then you're calm under pressure. It's rarely both.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. But it was under investigation again when he died.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to that later, because that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. So we're going to get into Alex Cox. He's his own little offshoot. Before we move on from that particular part of the documentary, I made a comment to you because this shit blew my mind when they did a small vignette of him shooting a pistol with 50 caliber rounds.
Right.
And I was like, what the fuck is he shooting a pistol with 50 caliber rounds? Like I've never been in the armed forces. My best experience with armed forces and weaponry is Call of Duty. And I know a 50 cal is like a sniper bullet.
No, it's a big ass, it's a huge thing. It takes 2 people. However, what did I tell you when you said that?
I said, did it feel like shooting a cannon? You went, and I said, I shot it with 0 accuracy.
Right, because I've shot a 50 cal, which is it's a huge thing. It's not a handgun. But I was on vacation in Vegas, and there's this place in Vegas, which if you're interested, it's called Machine Gun Las Vegas, and you can go shoot machine guns. And it's super fun. You should do it. But also they have a 50 cal. And I was like, obviously. Now, first of all, those rounds are so expensive that even when I was paying this ridiculous premium price to shoot machine guns, they're letting me go through like, a bandolier on the machine gun. I got like 3 rounds for the 50 cal because they're very expensive. And, I don't know. The bullets went down range where they were safely going. I don't know where they went beyond that. I could not lift the thing. I mean, it was embarrassing. I'm a small person, though. I feel confident that Alex Cox is taller than 5'2".
Probably, but he was not like a giant guy. Like he was like my size, and I'm like, listen, if I shot that thing, it'd be like throwing my shoulder joint out of whack. Like I remember shooting a 12 gauge shotgun when I was first hunting with my dad, and that thing was like, and it was like, that was just a 12 gauge shotgun. That's not like a 50 caliber fucking.
Well, here's the thing. So pistols do have more kick than rifles and shotguns because they're littler, but you're not as likely to get knocked on your ass because they're not in your shoulder.
That's fair, but still, you're
not likely to hit anything either, unless you've worked a lot with it. Like,
yeah. I just thought that was like hilarious that he was doing that. I don't know why.
It's an insane weapon to like. This is my self-defense weapon.
And he was practicing with it. Like, what are you practicing? Like, you have to have somebody that's literally like 2 feet in front of you.
Here's
And and if you shot somebody with that from 2 feet, you would blow their entire chest out, I would think.
Yeah, but here's the other thing about that. Just here, let me be a liberal for a second. I do own guns. I'm against guns for in-home self-defense because if the caliber is large enough to stop a person, it's large enough to go through a wall and hit your kid or hit your dog or whatever, right?
Mhm.
A 50 cal, like holy crap, that is not a self-defense weapon. That's insane.
Yeah. All right. Sorry for that side tangent. That was just something that was fucking hilarious to me, and I think that we needed to approach it.
This is not a funny story. I said it was not funny, but some of these elements are like,
that was ridiculous. When I thought, oh yeah, it's a 50 cal, and I was like, in a pistol. Like, what are you doing? Like, okay, whatever. So moving on from that, because I could talk about that nonsense for fucking 5 hours.
We'll do a whole episode on reactions to 50 cal handguns.
Yeah. But so now we have Charles Vallow dead in the house. The cops go in, they do their thing. Lori Vallow comes back, very calm. Like I said, Alex Cox gets released. Yeah, now we're at the point where we're kind of getting more into the Chad Daybell era, right? Like,
right. So, yes. Well, so what I'm confused about on this timeline is they say, oh, things really changed when she met Chad. She met Chad before or after her husband died, and I don't feel like the doc was like really specific on that. I was left wondering.
Yeah, I thought that the idea was before, because I think she was planting the seeds that Charles was cheating on her because she was cheating with Chad Daybell. I keep wanting to call it Daybell, but so like we said, Daybell is like this very, the end times are here. Here's all you, very, I'm going to teach you how to prep kind of stuff. Like one of those dudes who looks like a baby Huey guy. Like, I'm sorry, he just does not look like a prepper guy. In any respect, he's wearing like these cheap plaid shirts, just kind of this kind of dopey grin. Like, and I thought it was funny. He was at this conference and where him and Lori Vallow met, and he said, well, here's how my family sees me. And he meant his, like, it's not his wife and kids, but his external family. And it was, what was it? It was, who was the actor that he said they thought he was in the movie 2012? Woody Harrelson in 2012. Where he's like just kind of this crazy prepper, the world's going to end guy. And like, yeah, he was self-aware to know that people thought that of him, but he's like, but he was right. I'm like, oh, this okay, here we go.
Kills me about this whole story. You have crazy, but I know people think that what I'm going to say is crazy, so I'll keep it to myself. And then you have, I'm so crazy that I just say this stuff. And both of them did. Lori and Chad both did that. Mm-hmm. And somehow everyone was like, you know, people are weird.
Now, you're talking about the crazy stuff, and something that just occurred to me is like one of the crazier things I thought, and again, I'm not Mormon, so I don't know how crazy this is, but the idea of saying that you had an audience with Moroni.
No, that's insane, even by Mormon standards. And that's why
I thought that was like, hey, I talked to God. And I mean, like, I'm not talking like a preacher talking, like people are like, they spoke directly to me. Like, that sounds nuts. And forgive the terminology, but that sounds like you are just not. So
Mormons believe that the president of the church, who's also known as the prophet, has a direct audience with God. He speaks, back and forth with God. Mm-hmm. They don't believe that anybody else does. And again, like I said, in Mormon history, that's been a debate, right? Because if I think that I'm talking to God, then I think that the prophet is fake. But also, I was troubled by not getting any kind of information on whether or not Lori or Chad were excommunicated is because I feel like if their church leadership knew any of the stuff they were saying, they'd be excommunicated. They certainly wouldn't be going to the temple. It's out there even for Mormons. Like, way out there.
Yeah, I thought that was like akin to like just saying, "Oh, I speak directly to God," and you're like not anywhere in like clergy or anything like that. You're just, oh well, and then I have ministry with all these angels, and I'm like, okay, like people, even religious people would think that's a little bit out there beyond the pale, right? I'm not imagining that, right?
Mormons think everybody can be spoken to by the Holy Spirit, but they don't think you can have like a conversation with it. And they believe that the president of the church can talk to God. And there's like no mention of anybody talking to angels or, like that's just, it's not a thing. There's like some stuff in the very early days of the church that are probably closer to that. But even so, Moroni is like the guy who came and was like, here's all the stuff to start the church. And then like, that's it for him. He's not popping back in and out. So yeah, no, it's wild, even by Mormon standards. It's just not part of the religious belief at all.
I thought that just sounded a little bit. So that's why I wanted to ask, because it seemed like that's like kind of like woof. Like
I mean, Mormons believe weird stuff compared to other religions. I mean, okay, and
all religions believe weird stuff in certain ways.
I would not like everybody's weird if they believe different than you, like from your perspective.
Yep.
And I accept that. But I think like you think of what's weird about Christianity if you're not a Christian, Mormons are weird. They're not Scientology weird though. Like, there's like this scale, right? I feel like
that's a whole other show.
Yeah. Or not, because we don't have lawyers for that.
That is very true.
But I think Lori and Chad were more Scientology weird than Mormon weird, is what that's where I'd put them on the scale. They were littler than Scientology, obviously.
Fair point. Man.
I know. It's so wild. It's so wild, you guys. If you haven't seen it, you're probably like, what the hell are they talking about? And I'm sorry, but you'll watch it and you'll be like, I still don't understand.
Yeah. Can we, the other thing I wanted to discuss before we start going into really the Chad Daybell stuff, but he's part of this too, is the idea of like, when they first met, Chad Daybell told her, we've been married multiple times in previous things. And I'm just like, so like reincarnation is not a foreign concept to a lot of different religions. A lot of religions believe in that.
Not a foreign concept. So the belief about that, like, I guess what would be akin to that, I don't know. So the Mormons believe that we all existed before we came to Earth in heaven. There's no multiple lives. There's no coming back. It's like you exist behind the veil is what they would say. And they do believe you choose your family behind the veil, which is interesting. And
what if you're born to a shitty family? Like, does that mean you chose that? That seemed not like a great.
Well, but you would have made the choice behind the veil where everybody's perfect. It's very. Look, I'm not a member of the church anymore. Obviously, I don't believe this stuff, so I'm not the one to like make it make sense for you, because I would have stayed in if it made sense for me. But yeah, so you existed before you came to Earth, and you come to Earth, and you no longer have those memories, and then you die, and you go to one of the three heavens, or if you're a real bad person, you go to outer darkness. And if you are not Mormon and you're not a real bad person, you go to what is described in some of the teaching as like a spiritual waiting room. And you wait for
limbo.
No.
Limbo is actually not a good place to be. So in
the Mormon belief, it's not a bad place. It's just a place. And that's why Mormons believe in baptism for the dead, which is another thing that's done in the temple. You can go and be baptized for a member of your family. You used to be able to be baptized for people who weren't members of your family. Got them in a lot of hot water with Jewish people.
Yep. I remember
that. But you go get baptized for some member of your family, and the belief is that then Jesus Christ, his actual self, will come to you and be like, do you accept me? And if you say yes, you get to go to heaven. And if you say no, I don't even know what happens. I can't remember. But I always thought that was so funny because, like, who, if you believe in Jesus, who is in the presence of Jesus and is like, nah.
Uh,
So there's a
now
lot.
I'll take door number 2.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
All the pictures
Okay.
of you, you're a white guy, you're not white.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought that was interesting because it's almost like a spiritual hook that he
No, let me
kind of
tell
that.
you though, I've been in a really toxic relationship in my past, and that guy pulled that crap with me, and now I didn't believe it. I was just like, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
think
but
that's
yeah,
crazy that
yeah,
people
but if you're a vulnerable person and somebody tells you that and it feels like this real like we've all been in the presence of someone you just had this like really weird chemistry
Mhm.
electricity with, right? And just it's like right off the bat. And it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. It could be just you just fucking bond with them in this weird way. There's a just a physiological thing that works. And then you go, oh, well, we've been married multiple times. And then you have this whole, like, it makes it seem like you have this super long connection that dates back and
The
like
reason we feel this is not hormones and chemical blah blah
and
blah.
science. Yeah.
It's thousands of years of history. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for someone like Lori, who was clearly flawed or wounded or whatever you want terminology you want to use, that could have an appeal. Oh, cool. Someone who's like, and they're just this thing, they're vibing off of each other or whatever, which,
I yeah, and I also think like, so I've been married and divorced and I'm married again. And I kind of have this belief that if this one doesn't work out, I'm not doing it again. Right. And I
same.
have this sense that people who just keep doing it, like we kind of judge them as like maybe they're sleazy or they don't value marriage. But I kind of feel like it's maybe more often the opposite, right? It's like they just really want to believe that the one is out there and when they find the right person, like everything will fall into place. And so I'm
Mhm.
just gonna keep trying to like get it right. I think it's like a hopeless romantic thing more than it's a sleazy thing in a lot of ways.
I agree. I also think there's a lot of people who the idea of being alone really terrifies them, and that's maybe part of it too.
Yeah.
I have, and this is just a tangent. I think you get the time you get with your person, and sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's 10. You get a 10-year run with anybody, whether it's a friendship or whatever. That's a pretty good fucking run. We
Yeah.
if you're lucky, you live 80 to 90 years on this planet. You get a 10-year run, that's an eighth of your life that you were friends or with someone. That's pretty cool. Like I don't know. I have a different perspective on that than most folks,
I mean,
but
I have a lot of weird perspectives on marriage and relationships, but that's
yeah.
another podcast to live stream altogether.
Yeah, and not cult stuff, but
Yeah.
all
Although
right.
the beats that happen in cults are also very often the beats that happen in abusive relationships, and that's worth it.
Yeah, unfortunately so.
The love
Um,
bombing and all that.
yeah, and which what he was doing here. That's what he was doing. He was love bombing her right off the bat to try to, I guess woo her.
I wonder if he, this sounds so cliche. I wonder if he did that to all the girls, but he was building a following. He was selling these books to someone. And I wonder
Yeah,
if
and
he had, not that he told them all that they've been married for thousands of years, but some version of that, of like, you were meant to find me. You were meant to come to me. You were meant to find these books. We've been connected throughout
yeah,
all the time. I
yeah,
just love her, but we don't know.
yeah, and he had because he had decided he was going to create his own press, and I thought that was interesting because my assumption, and he didn't say it, but the assumption was like his books weren't really selling super well, so he decided to make his own press so he could just sell them as he wanted.
Yeah.
And as another little character to all this, and I cannot remember her name, and I didn't write it down, was a lady who said that she was part of the LDS Church who has prophetic visions and was just
Yes.
frowned upon in the end, and she was just like she that why was she in the dock? Like I
She was
want to know what was the point of her?
she was a follower of Chad's that she was like a true believer in his thing up to a point and then was like, oh, this is too weird even for me. I think that she was there for one reason and one reason only. They're like, look how crazy this girl is. And she thought he was crazy.
Oh, that's a
And I
good
don't
point.
think she
That's a
knew
good point.
I don't think that she knew that's the purpose she was serving, but it's like, look how wild this person's beliefs are. Look at what they think they can do. And they look at him and they go, mm-mm.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that, but that's a good, like, kind of like a counterpoint to, all right, you think she's a little weird? Check this guy out. So, yeah, that's a great point. I didn't think of that at all. Because I was like, why is she here?
It
Like,
was
I don't,
she's a weird, I mean, I don't know. I kind of like her. Like she owns her thing and it doesn't seem like she's hurting anybody. And I don't
yeah,
if
yeah,
you
I
can
agree.
talk to God if you're not hurting anybody. I mean, don't tell me about it, but
Yeah, leave me alone with that, but you do your thing. Yeah. Yeah, I just thought that I was just you're right. That's a good point. Why probably she was in there was kind of maybe to counterbalance his.
because she loved his books. And then when he got with Laurie, she was like, nope.
Yep, and then even she saw just how flawed that was.
So let's
So
get into Chad's thing.
yeah, well, where do you want to start? Because Chad's thing is I don't want to use the word interesting, but definitely
It is interesting.
interesting.
It's not interesting in a good way. It's not exciting.
No,
So what? Like, so he believed he had some gift of prophecy as well. I guess is the easiest way to say it, right? Or
yeah, but it was like a different thing, right? It wasn't the same thing as this lady. So why don't you explain it, and I'll add where I can.
okay. So he thought, I guess, you would compare it to like people who think they can read auras.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I think
Yeah.
that's
So he thought he
that's a
could
good
look at
comp.
a person and see where they were on this scale that he had invented of like spiritual.
It was light and dark is what he used the
Yeah,
term.
light and dark. And there was like a turning point at which a person was no longer a person, they were a zombie. And we'll get into this because I don't think he came up with the zombie thing. I think Lori did. But
Yeah, I didn't see anything to that indicator, but basically to him, a zombie was like someone who was
beyond help.
physically dead. Well, not physically alive, but completely inhabited by a demon. I think was kind of how they determined it, right?
Yes. But the reason I think Lori came up with that is because she, as I understand the timeline in the documentary, she had come up with this Ned thing before she got involved with Chad.
Yeah, I'm not sure the timeline of that, but maybe because I don't think did Chad ever mention Ned? I think later he did, but I don't think it was ever mentioned before that. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you're right. I think maybe, yeah.
And so I believe he came up with the scale and it was like weirdly like not Christian, right? It was like there are just people who can't be saved. There's some predestined whatever.
Hmm.
And then some people can if they haven't crossed this particular threshold. And he could tell by looking at you, which nobody can do that.
Nope.
Nope. I don't
Yeah.
care what you believe. If you believe in psychics, if you believe in prophets, nobody can just look at you and be like yes or no. Like it's just that's too much.
Yeah, I think you can get a sense of people, like, but I think that's more like most people you meet, and you're just kind of, all right, well, let's figure out are they somebody I'm okay with, and then
Right.
there's some people you just get some fucking goddamn thing just sets your sensors off, and they're like, no,
Yeah. Well, but
but
that's
that's a different thing, right?
right. Like if I'm interacting with somebody and I get this like run for your life vibe, I'm going to get the hell out of there. I'm not going to wait and see if something terrible happens. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't go home and be like, I met this person was beyond help today. They were truly evil and nothing is ever going to change that. I would not say that because that's just too wild. It's too much.
Is it similar to the Thetan shit for like? But the Thetan stuff is like if you're higher Thetans, you're great. It's not a matter of you being evil. Again,
No, no, no,
I'm
no, no. You want to get rid of your thetans.
oh, it's the opposite.
Yeah. So, but they think that but you can get rid of them.
Mm.
That's the whole thing. That's the whole reason you do the steps is you can get rid of them and be free of them. And yeah. So yeah, it's a weird thing because, almost every religion has like some idea that like you could be okay. Like,
Yeah.
if you do what we tell you to, you'll be okay. Now some
Mhm.
don't. Like Jehovah's Witnesses believe in predestination.
Yeah.
But then
And
they
I mean,
have some other scale of like what happens to everybody else that's good but isn't part of the thing. And so they even have like a safety net for good Jehovah's Witnesses that aren't part of the 144,000. So it's just, yeah, it's weird. It's weird to say it's not a very good cult leader tactic, right?
No.
You can't join. You're terrible. Bye.
So you said the 144,000, that is for Jehovah's Witnesses, whereas like the first episode was actually called 144,000.
Yeah, I think that they had some of that too. And so here's the thing, it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses that believe that. It's got some tie. You know what? I did not look this up. I forgot that it was tied in when I even used that comparison. I believe it is tied to some interpretation of the Book of Revelations.
Hmm. I think that is. I think I remember seeing that was kind of something. Yeah, the Revelations is
It's
one
a
that's a highly interpretable
yeah,
book of the Bible. So, well, as most of the Bible is, but again, another show.
especially Revelations. Yeah.
Revelations, especially because there's lots of people use it in a lot of different ways.
So again, though, a lot of cults that have some basis in Christianity, that's where they start.
Mm-hmm.
So someone comes to you and starts telling you a whole lot about the Book of Revelations, like, be careful.
Tread lightly. So yes. Yeah. Oh, man. So all right. So Chad has got this whole rating system. All right. And what's interesting is one of the things that Colby Ryan's wife, Kelsey, finds is this email where it's a rating system for Lori Vallow's family.
Yes.
And this is where we see more of the crazy start coming out. And again, I'm using crazy. I probably shouldn't. Laura, the things that seem completely nonsensical. How about I start to phrase it that way? Because I do not want to offend people who have mental illness, because that's just not cool.
It's not about mental illness. And I think like there's this line, right? Like they're delusional people.
Delusional is a good word.
Those delusions were fed on purpose, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So the things, there's certain people in this family who have these dark markers, like the oldest brother Adam. Laurie's oldest brother Adam is like a level 3 dark. And what's interesting, not interesting but weird, is how he'll determine when it happens, when they turn dark, or like.
And it seems based in nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Absolute nonsense.
Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the doc. He just texts Laurie one day and it's like at 11:58 or something like that. Yesterday, my wife turned. She's a zombie now. And you'd think if it's his wife, she's doing all the stuff, she should be safe.
Mm-hmm. Might be convenient.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Because here's the other thing is we talk about, I keep saying like there's a lot of similarities to toxic relationships, but like anybody who's watched a lot of true crime, when people cheat and they want to, not every person, obviously, or there'd be a lot of dead people, but like there's this thing in true crime. It's like Amy Fisher, Scott Peterson, the one in Colorado that killed his wife and kids. Like it's this, like there's this urge of like it's less wrong to kill my family to be free of them than to like just get a divorce.
Yeah,
it's a weird escalation that happens in a lot of true crime stories that involve infidelity. So there's a lot of conveniences that happen in this documentary, but yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that the one that had the lowest, the most dark level was Tylee, the daughter of Lori. She had the darkest level.
Well, I thought that it was the son Colby was the worst, but Tylee was the second worst, and she was with Lori at the time, which is why I was concerned.
That might be. I didn't see anything about Colby's ranking. Maybe I missed that because I've watched it twice, but like maybe I just missed that.
It is wild though. It is hard. It is really hard to keep track of everything.
And the thing is, like, I watch it and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? And I remember you were like, that I didn't know this was LDS related, and I need a minute. Like, you watch the first episode, you're like, holy shit, I have to process a lot. So this whole light dark thing. And you contend Lori had some input into this, probably, but like this was a system he devised. Like he didn't just like, and it's very convenient that the people that were inconvenient to him had these levels of darkness.
So why don't we move into our debate? Because I think you're starting to make your case. So let's like make it official. So we have a difference in opinion in who was the true believer and who was the manipulator.
Yep.
Doug believes that Chad was the manipulator and Lori was the true believer. And I believe that Lori was the manipulator and Chad was the true believer. And so why don't you make your case, Doug?
Well, I'm going to say that I think both of them were true believers, but I think Chad was a manipulator.
Different levels, I guess, is what I would say.
Because there's one comment in that documentary that really struck me, and it was a comment where he made to the lady who was part of the LDS but had prophetic visions.
Uh-huh.
And he said something to her that I probably think he didn't want to say out loud, but he said, "My plan can't move forward until the spouses are dead." And so to him, in order for his prophecy, because he made it very clear, he thought the New Jerusalem was coming to him. He was going to be the person leading the people in New Jerusalem when it came. So to me, he was saying, I'm going to figure out a way to make the spouses dead. And he did for his deceased wife. And to me, like, I'm not saying Lori Vallow was completely like innocent and all this shit. No, not at all.
They're both horrible people.
Yes, for sure.
They're both cult leaders. They both bear responsibility for their parts in this. Like I don't think either one of them is a victim. I'll say that.
No, they're both tied their shit into each other. But I think his books, his idea of the end times, it was the driving force for both of them. So in that case, that is why I believe he is the one that, like, maybe the driving force is a better terminology for what I'm saying for him in their pursuit. But I think he was more, I think she's a more manipulative person when she had to be, but I think she was quite enamored with him and his vision. And that's why he was kind of the alpha of that relationship, if you will.
Okay. So actually, it's
make your case, Renee.
I feel like I disagree for the same reasons that you've made your case. Away.
Okay, interesting. Let's go.
So one thing that I think the documentary does a disservice on is we learn a lot about what Chad believes, but we don't learn what Lori believed before she met him, because she was running the podcast and doing this group before she met him.
That's fair.
As so far as we know, because they don't really get into the membership of this group, it was her brother. It was like a lot of people connected to her. And then she meets up with him and he's got all these people connected to him. Now, like I said, we have these stories that we see over and over again in true crime where someone is having an affair and they decide that, well, if I just kill my husband or my wife, then then certainly no one will think it was me and I'll just go live happily ever after, right?
Which never happens.
Smart. I'm just saying it happens. So I think when she saw his rating system and she saw that he had these ideas, these delusions of grandeur, I'll just say it like that she saw a mark. I do believe she was enamored with him. I think she really wanted to run whatever was going to come with him. Mm-hmm. But it was her husband. It was her children, including the one that was going to be difficult to take care of, including the teenager Tylee, who would have been telling her brother what was going on if she had access to her phone. Okay. So, and then it was his wife. And it was his wife after she bought a wedding ring for him. And so to me, it's like, yes, those people were inconvenient to him, but they were more inconvenient to her. They were her responsibilities. And just in a more universal sense, and obviously this is not true of everyone. It's not completely true of her either, obviously. But I think it's a lot harder to convince a mother to kill her children than it is to convince someone to kill their spouse if they're done with their spouse already. And so I think that she wanted her kids dead. Because if he would have said right out at the beginning, oh, your kids are dark, I feel like most parents would be like, no, they're not. Because they weren't providing a pushback to her like other members of her family were. They were just there. And we've seen Tylee would do what she needed Tylee to do. So it's just hard for me to see it as like all of her responsibilities disappeared, but only his wife disappeared.
Okay, but to that end, I had a point and now it's escaping me. And now I feel terrible because it was actually a good point, damn it. It just feels like he had this grand vision of himself.
But so did she. And somehow they made it meld together. And I think that's hard. That's why it's hard to know for sure.
Yeah,
right?
and they're not talking. They have not said shit. And it's we maybe agree to disagree on this, and that's fine. Like this is interpretable, but like I can see your point. I can see the way you're seeing it. I think for her whole life she was looking for someone to kind of give her the spiritual compatibility that she wanted so badly, that someone who saw this vision of how the world was going to end like gave her the power to be. And the other bit that I wanted to talk about, I just remembered it, is JJ was autistic, and one of his things was to repeat things he heard.
Right.
And one of the one lady pointed that out and just thought, I wonder if JJ heard something he shouldn't have and was repeating it.
See, so I agree. I actually agree with both the things that you just said, but it still doesn't change my opinion, which is why I think this is so interesting, right?
It is a fascinating debate. Yes.
It's so weird that neither one of us could win. I really believe that. Like,
no, I agree. I don't think there's a winning point in this at all for anybody, for real. But yeah.
But I think that there's, God, I hate to say this, what I'm about to say out loud, and I swear to God, if anybody like ever isolates this clip of audio, I'm screwed for life. I can see a situation where Chad could say to her, look, he heard it and he's been repeating it and we have to do something about it.
Yeah, that's the point that I was saying, is like, that's probably what happened.
Highly come into that. And that's where and there's the other thing that really bothers me. And I guess we didn't mention this, but it does seem like Alex killed everyone.
Yeah, Alex, and even which we haven't got into, which we need to circle back to that very quickly because we're already an hour and a half in and we still have more shit. We have more ground to cover. So
we're going to do 3 episodes for the 3 episodes. I'm kidding.
No. We'll get to this. So I agree with you. It seemed like Alex was kind of doing the dirty work, which he gets to a point where he's part of doing all this stuff, and he marries a woman. It begins with Zelena Pastanez.
Yes.
He marries her because, and like one of Lori's nieces marries this other guy because they believe they have to be paired up before they pass away so that they can be together forever in existence or whatever.
Right. And that's back to mainstream Mormons, weirdly enough.
Yeah, so that's more to that. But Alex dies 2.5 weeks after he marries her, and apparently had blood clots in his lungs. Alex was not an old man. It was considered a natural death at the time.
When there was a history, right?
What's that?
I think they mentioned in the documentary there was a family history of something.
There was a family history of that, but he had never had any symptoms of it before this happened. Now, listen, I had a heart attack and when I was 50, and there was no symptoms of that. So is it plausible? Yeah, certainly it's plausible. Just seems weirdly fishy at the timing of it all. Right. And he was talking to his wife, and it was like they were talking about all the shit that was going on with Lori and Chad and how the cops were like kind of descending on him. And he told his wife, I think they're going to make me the fall guy.
Yeah.
that was his phrasing to his wife.
But
and then very soon after that, he dies. Like,
the really chilling part of the documentary is we know like the kids are missing. And even if you didn't know anything of the news story before you watched the documentary, it's pretty clear that they're not missing, unfortunately. But somebody says that they were at somebody's apartment. There was like 2 apartments. That whole apartment building thing was really confusing.
Yeah, that was confusing. Too.
They were there, and Chad and Lori were there. And Alex comes in with JJ asleep and puts him to bed. And me and my husband were watching that, and we just looked at each other and we're like, that kid was dead.
Yeah, I thought either dead or completely drugged to the gills so he wouldn't respond. It was one of the two. But
I mean, just to me, it was like, I mean, maybe I have prophetic vision. No, I'm kidding. But it was like certainty, right? When they said, I was just like, that kid was dead. And, I don't know. I'm not really a prophet or a psychic. I don't know. I can't prove it, but that's what I think. And then you go, where the fuck was Tylee when that was going down?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, what's interesting is, of course, now we get to a point where, like, she gets arrested. Now, again, we're going into
let's go back to Alex's death because there's more weird about it than the timing.
Very
so many weird things about it.
Yeah.
Well, again, how is it possible to cause clots in someone's lungs? I have no idea. I'm not sure it is. But the circumstances around the death are super weird. And this is one of those things that you're just like, what is going on here? This is super weird. So one, his wife claims she doesn't know Lori and wasn't aware Lori was remarried. But Lori and Chad set them up to get married. And they were part of this group. So that's the first weird thing. The second weird thing is when he dies and the cops come, she says, am I under investigation for murder?
Yeah, that's like her first comment.
Right. And like I told you, if my husband had been murdered, that wouldn't be my first question because that's a dumb thing to say. But if he died of natural causes, like, why would your mind ever go to that? And then it's like everybody's calling her, telling her not to talk to the police. She lawyers up. It's like, what in the hell was going on? Because I don't know of anything in the world that I could give a person that would cause them to spontaneously have enough blood clots in their lungs to kill them.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some shit that could happen, but it's just that the timing is so.
Like if he had had a heart attack or just mysteriously died in his sleep, I'd be like, she poisoned him. But it's this medical thing that you're like, no, I mean, it sounds like natural causes. So why was everything surrounding it so weird? Why?
Maybe it is just natural causes, just the timing is fucking off. Like, but coincidences like that are not something I'm very good with. Right? Like that sparks your brain to think.
It bothers me so much, Doug. When we decided we were doing this, I just kept thinking about this article we read. Like, what? Why? How? Can you do that? Can you cause someone to have blood clots? Is it possible? Like,
like I said, I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure. I just don't know what that is. But like
anybody involved is smart enough to do it.
Yeah, I think there's smart enough people in that sphere to do it, but like, I'm not sure how they would. I don't know. But yeah, so I said we got Alex. He dies, and then we get to this weird thing where, like, Colby is trying to contact his mom. Like, what the fuck is going on? Where are my siblings? Like, he's trying to figure. And she's like, "Don't worry about it. I got it figured out. Don't worry about it. They're safe."
From the beginning, he had been texting his sister, as we mentioned, they were close, and he knew that something was off.
Yeah.
And then there was the point at which he said, "Just call me so I know that it's really you." And then that number was disconnected. Boom.
Yep. Yeah, that was the mom doing that. So as we know. So So it turns into like a national story because like the kids are missing and nobody knows where the kids
But
are.
they're,
And
like, getting married on the beach in Hawaii, and the news is there, like, "Where are your
well,
kids?" And they're just
yeah,
like,
but even before that, they were asking her, and she was just like, "There's, it's okay." Like she just like weirdly dismissive and just like, and the thing that bothered. So I watched this the second time with Jill, and she was so bothered by her smirk.
yes.
She had this smirk of just like
It's
just the entire time, and she would
That's
just
part of my reasoning, though, because I see this thing of, like, "It's okay, they're safe." It's like, we saved them from the zombie demon or whatever. I could buy that, that she really believed that. Um, I can buy it, I don't understand it.
Mhm.
But the smirk, she's just so freaking
But
self-satisfied.
but she had the smirk the whole time. Like that's the thing is like the smirk might have been her default, and it sounds
Resting
weird, but
smirk face.
resting smirk face,
Maybe.
murderous smirk face,
Resting murder face. I think that's what I have
resting
right
murder
now.
face.
I've had a lot of whiskey, I'm grinning.
Yeah. Maybe you need some more hot whiskey, but
No.
no, I'm good. Um, So, like you said, they end up somehow they end up in Hawaii, and like everybody's trying to figure out where they are because they weren't in Rexburg, Idaho. Which my wife's
That
like, why
sounds
the fuck?
terrible.
Why the fuck does all this stuff happen in Idaho?
Well, so Idaho is like Utah Junior
Yep,
for Mormons.
and
And
it's always, but Utah and Idaho are all these like where all these weird kind of prepper things happen.
yeah, I think it's either Idaho or Iowa, but I'm pretty sure it's Idaho. Like, I think
Uh,
there's a lot of white nationalist preppers up there too.
oh, bunches of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it turns out somebody finds them, and the best thing is like the one reporter from this Arizona paper, and is Justin, and I cannot remember his last name. He like was like chasing this shit down, and nobody
He
else
was
was.
on it from the start, man. Like,
Yeah, he was just on it. He's like, this seems fucking weird. And I said to my wife, I'm like, it's really fucked up when you see these investigative reporters come up with shit that they're like the police should have figured out that was like really elementary. Like maybe I should look at this, and they're like, nope. And this investigative reporter's like finding all this stuff and connecting all these dots. And he gets this video of Lori and Chad in Hawaii. And
which
then
then sets the sun off, right? Because that was like their
yeah,
last happy family memories all together.
yeah.
Were
When Charles and Lori and all the kids were in Hawaii, they moved there. They were living there. They were having this like idyllic life in Hawaii. Yeah,
Sort of seems like when they left Hawaii, everything got really
really messy.
screwed up between Lori and Charles. It's anyway. There's all these weird, like,
Parallels.
intersective points in this story where you're like, and then it got really bad, but not as bad as it was gonna get. Like,
Yeah, and they do that in the show where like I didn't realize it would get worse. And I'm like, oh, it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse.
yeah, they wouldn't have made a documentary if that was as bad as it got. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, and then the reporter gets and he goes, and I kid you not, 666 photos of Chad and Lori's. 666.
Okay.
That killed me. Like, oh my god.
It's not funny, but some of the details are funny. I'm sorry, it's true. We can't help it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but just the number was funny, and it's just these pictures of them just like enormously happy on a beach, and Colby was like that. Like I couldn't believe that the kids weren't there. Like,
Here's the thing that really is wild to me. She was just so goddamn certain she was going to get away with it. She told the cops the kids were with a friend in another state and did not even tell the friend that she had told them, and just expected that the friend would lie. And when the friend calls her up pissed off, she's like, "Oh, I just can't believe you're not backing me up. I thought we were friends." It's like,
and the friend was like, if you thought we were friends, you wouldn't have done that shit to me. And I'm like,
first of all, right? But second of all, like, on what planet do you sit and you think, yeah, this person will totally lie to the cops and say they have my kids for me, and not this person's totally going to be extremely fucking worried about where my kids are if the cops call her and ask and they're not with her. And she's been told that they are.
Yeah, and Chad actually previously told them they were with their grandparents, and the grandparents made the wellness call. That was the best part, where the cops like, well, that's kind of unlikely since they were the ones that asked me for this wellness call. So that's backtracking a little, but yeah.
I mean, we sort of skipped over the part where the kids went missing. Sorry. The kids went missing, but they were in fact dead the whole fucking time.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other thing. When I talk about like how sure these people were that they were smarter than everyone else, this is so stupid to me that when he buried the kids on his property, he sent Lori a text as a cover for why
It wasn't Lori. It was his wife.
Oh, for why he dug a hole, though.
Yeah, I shot a raccoon.
Right.
So I buried him.
Debris, and I shot a raccoon, so I buried it. And I'm like, look, I get it. If someone finds a hole on your property, you want to have a good story. I get it.
Yeah.
You have a reason. You want to be like, no, it's a raccoon. What you don't want to do is draw attention to the fact that there is a hole on your property.
And he also said in the same text and it was to his wife, which was her name was Tammy, and she died as well. He sent it to her, and it's like, oh yeah, I was going to burn the brush that was back there before the storm. So he did a double cover where he's like, oh well, there's a cover for the hole in the ground. There's also a cover of why I burned stuff. And we learn later the corpses were partially burned.
But again, the cops only looked on the property because they saw the text message that said that there was a hole. It's just mind-boggling that they thought they were so good at this and they were so bad at it. I mean,
well, if he wouldn't have texted that, would they have ever looked there?
That's what I'm saying, is they might not have. They still don't. Am I incorrect that they still don't even know what killed Tammy?
No, they said in the documentary at the very end that the cause of death of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ have not been released to the public.
Oh, that's right. We don't know, but
we don't know, but they know,
right.
Which is going to come out in the trial. So because they decided to go to trial, they did not take any plea bargains.
So again, this idea that they are it's just all going to be okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we have this whole thing where they're in Hawaii and oh, hold on.
Yeah, we're getting a comment in.
Yeah. So just a thought, if you have a comment or a coagulant over the course of a certain number of days, month, has a genetic predisposition, could that be it? Hey, Daniel's like, yeah, Daniel's like fucking brilliant. So, and he knows shit about everything. So thank you, Daniel. That could be it. I don't know.
The show to be over, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be like to my husband, like, babe, I figured it out.
Yeah.
I didn't, but
look at you, fucking amateur sleuth, Daniel. Thank you.
Honestly, though, that's my new conspiracy theory. I buy it wholeheartedly. I'm in this.
Thank you for adding that to the conversation, Daniel.
I mean, I'm so impressed. Look.
Yeah, this is why we have comment, because that shit's not anything I would have thought of.
Now I'm going to be Googling coagulants, and I'm going to be on. Like,
I know a little bit about coagulants because of blood thinners and stuff, but not that's completely new to me.
But I do feel like, I don't know. I write crime fiction, so I come up with creative ways to kill people all the time. And I wrote one where like a lady was a baker and she became a hit person for the mob, and they'd be like, these fancy cupcakes for the party, and they just happen to have like peanut powder in them, and it, or whatever. Like there's ways,
reaction.
Yeah.
But
I don't know all of them, but now I know that one.
Yeah. Oh man.
So they're in Hawaii. Sorry, my mind is blown. I'm so glad.
Yeah, somebody came up with an idea that maybe worked. Like, yeah. So anyway, like I said, we're at hour 44, and we still haven't gotten to the penultimate stuff or even the ending part. So they're discovered in Hawaii. They get this whole download of their wedding pictures. Their son Colby is fucking devastated because it's in Hawaii. while they're given till a certain date. Tell us where your kids are.
Which is
They
nuts.
did, which like, hey, just fucking arrest them. Don't
Like,
give them a goddamn deadline. Holy shit, it's been months. It's
yeah,
been millions of dollars and all this stuff invested in trying to find these fucking kids.
it's if you're a
Compel
parent
them.
and the first time the cops ask you where your kids are, you cannot provide that information.
That's a red flag.
Big red flag. If they've been reported missing.
Oh my God. So basically the time comes, they arrest her. She gets extradited to Ohio or Idaho, not Ohio. Ohio might be appropriate too, because that state fucking sucks. But, yeah, so hey, I'm making enemies all over the place. So what's interesting, yeah. So anyway, they bring her in, and Chad Daybell at this point has not been arrested. He's in the crowd watching her, and her son Colby is in there, and he's trying to get her attention, trying to figure out what the fuck's happening, and she pans not to him but to Chad Daybell and gives him this giant grin. Doesn't look at her son as she walks out, and he just fucking confused, poor guy. But so anyway, that happens, and then eventually they stumble upon the text message that you mentioned, where it's like, oh, well, this happened, and there's a few other things that coincide with them deciding to go to Chad Daybell's property.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, while they are there, he gets a call from Lori Daybell from prison. Are you okay? No, they're searching the property. What can I do? Nothing.
You're in prison, so probably not a whole lot.
Yeah. You can't make me feel better or give me head, so you're good. But then she says, can I call you when I call you later? And he's like, I don't know. Well, no, you're not going to be able to, because they find two bodies. Yeah, they find two bodies on the property, because the FBI, when they also got Alex Cox's phone and discovered like the ping from where he was in the yard for 2.5 hours in a certain spot. So they find one body, and then they go to another spot, and they find two bodies. At that point, they don't confirm whether it's JJ and Ty Lee. Later, they do. Partially burned bodies. And one of them is a small body with red pajamas. And in that 666 photo download that reporter received, one of them is poor JJ in red pajamas. And to that reporter, that was one of the most heartbreaking photos in that download.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we've been having a good time with this, but like, honest to God, like, you get to this point in the documentary, and it's
that's the shit that killed me.
There's no more fun, like it's a little fun when you're getting into all these wild beliefs and you're trying to like put together what happened and just keep up. But then you have to really like sit with the knowledge, like these were real people, and these were real children who were innocent. This is a real family. It's this horrible situation where the family members of the victims or the family members of the perpetrator, it's just nothing about it is fun anymore at that point. You're just heartbroken.
Mm-hmm. And, Colby is talking about just like, are they little bones? Is it the little skeleton? Is it a teenage skeleton? Just trying to find out information. And like, just the idea of him saying, is it a little skeleton? I don't know why that just.
No, because it's like, you think that you never want to imagine a time where that would be an appropriate question for anyone to ask.
Nope. And the thing is, Colby also has a small child. Like her name's Riley, and he has it with his wife Kelsey. So he's also a dad, and like thinking about all this kind of shit, and just imagining that sort of thing and how it's playing in his brain is fucking hard. And in the middle of all this stuff where the FBI is digging up the thing, Chad Daybell tries to escape his house. Tries to get in the car and leave, And the
I'm sure she'll be fine.
cops are like, fuck that. Here you are. They arrest him. And then they do a whole court scene where they talk about all the shit they found on his property, which is just like, it's all just confirmation of all the shit we've seen. Just like, it's hard. It's hard to watch because it's two kids. And weird as it sounds, it's harder to watch something where two kids were murdered versus two adults.
Oh, no, I don't think that's strange at all because children, they're children. They haven't done anything. They weren't involved. They didn't have a judgment call to make. And this is their mother pulling them into this that they should be able to trust. And, as we discover, they were killed almost immediately upon her moving. So they didn't even have a chance to pick up the phone and call somebody and say something's not right. It's very hard to protect children from their parents when their parents are the perpetrators. And it's very heartbreaking. And to that point, I think you have the physical evidence, which is obviously incredibly important when you're deciding if somebody did something or not. But it was those circumstantial things that hit me the hardest because those are the things that show just the callousness and the lack of emotion, the lack of care for these victims. And you just understand these people did not give a flying fuck about anybody but themselves.
Nope. And their prophecy, I think that was also part of it, is that my prophecy needs to be right.
Yes, I cannot be wrong.
I cannot be wrong. This has to be right. So whatever the cost, my ideals and my prophecy has to be right. And that's something that, like, both of them, I think, they're responsible for a lot of shit. I think that's the thing that really, really hits it, is that he was willing to kill Chad Daybell was willing to kill his wife. And Lori was willing to kill two of her kids because he said they were dark.
Yeah.
And there was also like this other element where that was not really fully delved into, but it was a guy. His name began with a B, and it was Lori's niece's ex-husband.
Yeah.
Where he was considered so evil that they had to eliminate him, and they didn't. They shot like at the window out of his car.
They didn't hit him.
But the level that shows the level of how far they were willing to go to eliminate these 20,000, just 20,000 zombies. Like, why 20,000? Why was that the number? Like,
here's the thing, Doug, that never sat right with me, and I don't know if this is because they were completely delusional or because they were just really selfish people. But what are the chances that out of over 7 billion people on this earth, 20,000 of them are zombies, and out of those 20,000, 5 of them are people you personally know?
Very low.
And I can tell by looking at you, so how come they're not killing people in the grocery store? It's very, I guess there's so much to this that is just so wild and so difficult to wrap your brain around. And I understand, like, you are not, unless you are this kind of person, you're never going to think like this kind of person, but it will keep me up at night. It will.
Same. So at this point, we're at a point where they're both arrested because he gets arrested after the bodies, and it's also his ex-wife is exhumed because they're trying to figure out what that is.
His late wife. They didn't get divorced.
Oh, that's right. His late wife was exhumed. And there was a conspiracy on that, a conspiracy charge on Charles Vallow. There's a lot of charges. So we're right now where we're at with that bit is just their standing trial, and now they have both been charged with first-degree murder. Idaho is seeking the death penalty of both of them. So this is not. Listen, I will be honest. I am not a fan of the death penalty, but there are points where you can go. I see it.
No, I'm against the death penalty. Probably not for the same reasons that most people are. I just don't trust the government to get it right.
That's a fair point.
And that's really my main thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a whole lot of like black and brown people killed because cops just decided that they're the most likely candidate.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's really it. That's just it. I just don't trust the government to be right. If I thought we could be right 100% of the time, and it was used in especially heinous cases like this, I don't know that I'd be against it. But we don't
Yeah.
live in the world, so I don't know for sure how I would feel if we did.
Yeah. I'm in agreement here. I think it's just one of those things. So, but we also have to talk a bit about an addendum on this.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the documentary, the first 2 episodes are a pretty wild ride. And I've
Mhm.
been saying it's like you're on a roller coaster, and then the third episode is like, when the roller coaster brakes hit and you slow down.
Mhm.
It's like that for an hour.
Yep.
But it's supposed to be kind of this message of hope, right? Like Colby is trying to build a better family with his wife and his daughter.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of really beautiful scenes of them as a family. And I think it feels very sad, but kind of good. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's not really the whole story there either.
Nope. So yeah, our guy Colby and his wife Kelsey, um, they're not together anymore.
Right.
And there was a few months ago, Colby was charged with sexual assault of Kelsey, which was later dropped. So who knows what happened there? But he, there's so much fucking shit to that because he was sexually abused as a child.
There's cycle of abuse there. He was sexually abused as a child. I don't think he's ever seen
A
a
normal
healthy
family,
marriage, a normal marriage.
a
And there's
healthy marriage.
family is weird going back because if you remember these scenes with him and his grandmother, he she
We didn't even really dig into her, but yeah, the grandmother is off.
she's very off. She's very weird, and she's almost like voluntarily in denial. She doesn't want to let anything. She's basically telling him, "Oh, someday you're going to want pictures of your mom," and it's like you come. It's just like you feel the tension in that room, right? Like
Mhm.
I am not Lori Vallow's son, and I want to shake that woman and be like, "Hello, she killed your
Mhm.
grandkids. She killed his brother and sister. He is not going to want to look back on the happy memories. That's not how it works." So there's so much trauma there, and like we don't know what happened. It didn't go to court.
Mhm.
She dropped the charges. I'm not going to speculate, but it's just like, I mean, it's inexcusable. It's absolutely inexcusable, no matter what, if it
Mhm.
happened.
Yep.
I assume that it did because I assume that women don't lie about that.
Yep. Believe women. That's the whole thing, right?
But it's sort of like, I mean, I almost wonder if like the reason she dropped it is because in the end it was just like, fuck, like what else?
Yeah.
What
How much
else?
more shit can we get piled on us? So yeah.
And again, I don't know that either. I'm not speaking for her, but it is depressing. It's like, I don't know. You look at some people and you kind of really get a sense that they never had a chance to be
Yeah.
good people. And I'm not saying he's necessarily a bad person, but he's not, from what we are hearing, the best person. There's a lot of stuff going on there that he needs to deal with and maybe isn't dealing with in the healthiest way.
Yeah. And he needs therapy.
Like
which
a
which which most of us do, to be fair, and we've not had the rough road that guy has had, nor have we had the road that his estranged wife has. So it's something where we have to kind of err on the side of caution and to say he was charged, but it was dropped. I'm gonna believe her, but
right.
that's how I'm gonna go. But like it's a sad extra note on this story.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think in the same way we've been saying you don't know how you'd react. You can't say you know how she'd react or why she would do the things that she did because the situation is so horribly unique.
yeah, yeah. I just don't know. So yeah, that's an ugly bow to that whole story. So like I said, we're going to see that play out as we go into next year, where both Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell are going to go to actual trial in a joint trial, which is unique. Most that
It
doesn't happen
is.
very often.
It is unique, and I am almost mad about it
Yeah. I kind of wish they weren't allowed to do that.
I think that they have a better chance of screwing each other over doing a joint trial, but I also
Yeah.
feel like they're getting like their persecution complex, their wild love story, blah blah blah. Like they're getting to feed that, and it makes me mad. I don't think they should get anything that makes them feel like they're right about anything. That's my
Agreed.
mama bear, like visceral fuck you anger coming out, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have much greater chance of fucking screwing things up by doing it together. But at the same time, I don't want to give them any joy. I don't want to give them any sort of idea that they might be right. So I'm with you on that.
So, Doug, we're at the 2 hour mark, and we did the same thing the documentary did. We're on this roller coaster, and now we're like, so I don't know. Like, do you know a joke? Is there something
Not of this?
not about this? Just like in general, like, can we direct people to like go right now? Go to Instagram, go to the Reels section, and like find some raccoons.
Yeah, find some pet videos. Do it on TikTok. Do it whatever. Get yourself to some
Go
happy
join a
place.
Facebook group about cats.
Yeah, just find something that makes you happy.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're going to be doing this once a month, every Wednesday. Next time is
Not every Wednesday. The first Wednesday of every month.
Yeah, first Wednesday of every month. Not every Wednesday. I apologize on that. So the next one, I believe, is going to be the December 7th. But we are also doing a Brothers and Booze takeover on November 2nd. So the next one that I think we're going to cover, if you and I are in agreement.
Yeah.
Nexium, which is a fucked up goddamn thing and in a completely different way. If you want to hear about
everything. It's got sports in a weird way.
Yeah.
Weird. There's like filmmaking in it? I don't know.
And it starts off with this whole thing where you feel like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's the problem. It starts off something makes a lot of sense. God damn it.
We'll get there when we eventually do Jonestown too, because that was the hardest part of Jonestown for me. Is like there's a spot there in the middle where you're like, oh no, I would have totally been there. Fuck.
Yeah. There's a bit of me go, oh, yeah, and that's the thing. So Nexium, and what we're going to talk about is on the 2nd, we're going to talk about the show The Vow, which is on HBO, which is there's 2 seasons. I believe we're going to do the first season on the 2nd, and then the second season on the 7th. That's kind of a rough.
That's kind of our rough outline, just because we're splitting it into 2 shows, and that makes sense.
Yeah, and neither of us have seen the second season. The first season was like kind of fucked up in a way that I'm like, I need like 5 days to process what the fuck was going on there.
I'm going to give you your trigger warning now, so you can spend all thinking about whether or not you want to get into the sex abuse branding cult, because that's a thing.
Yeah, it's a sex cult, and it's branding, and it's human trafficking, and all kinds of fucked up stuff. So yeah, so just be warned.
And then after that, Doug, I want to pitch this because this one was really heavy, and that's going to be really heavy. I have a harmless cult that I love, and I think we should do that one after Nexium, just to give everybody a palate cleanser.
Okay, tell me what it is so we can get everybody ready. What?
It's called Unarius, and there's wonderful costumes, and nobody dies.
Unarius. All right, now
there's lots of make believe, and it's weird as hell, but nobody gets hurt.
Oh, that'd be a nice refresher.
Yeah, so we'll do that for our 3rd cult, just to give everyone.
So that'll be January. So yeah.
Happy New Year! Cleanse your palate, laugh a little bit. Great outfits.
So, folks, do you see that we have well, now we don't have it on the ticker down below, but we have a link tree that has all of our links. So we have a Facebook group, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have a YouTube channel, so you can watch YouTube. You can watch it later. But there's the link tree. Please join us. Please join us on Facebook. Please join us on Instagram, Twitter. Talk to us. Have any comments? Any interesting?
Everywhere except Instagram, because you can't.
Yeah, so we can't stream to Instagram, unfortunately. But here's the thing: talk to us on there. Maybe there's a cult that we haven't heard of, or some shit you want us to look at. Great, tell us. We
Definitely give recommendations, but keep in mind that we don't want to do these really big ones. So like we know Heaven's Gate, we know Jonestown, we know but we're not going to tackle those right out of the gate.
Yeah, because those things we need to build up to, especially something like you said, like Jonestown's a massive undertaking because there's so much going on in that. For instance, Heaven's Gate, Hell Bop, which I think is a Heaven's Gate. Yeah, is that the synonymous? That's synonymous. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. So, but yeah, just understand we had the big ones we're going to get to. We just wanted to start with something that was, I'm going to use the word easily digestible. That the phrase, that is the wrong phrase, but you know what I mean? Something that's a short.
More easily digestible?
Yeah, maybe that's a great way to say it. So, but anyway, folks, please, thank you for joining us. I am so happy to be doing this with you, Renee. I am ecstatic because this is just a weird passion of mine. And
same.
Thank you for doing this with me. I'm ecstatic to be doing this with you.
Yeah, and just thanks for the people who joined us on the live stream tonight and gave us a shot. And thanks to the people who find this later on YouTube. And hopefully we'll see you next month and we'll interact more and have a lot more fun. And in the meantime, yeah, definitely find us on our socials and talk to us because
we want to hear what you have to say.
We thought about it. We're gonna have fun.
Yeah. Like I said, we will be on Brothers and Booze on December 2nd, which is a Friday at 9 p.m., just to kind of do a bit of a takeover of that show. And then we'll be again on November 7th. So Nexium twice.
It'll take at least 2, right?
I think so. Because it's 2 seasons and it's going to be one build up and then the aftermath.
We did 2 hours on 3 episodes. So we're going to have to do some distillation, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. So, all right, folks, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you, Renee. Love you. Thanks for being on.
Good night, everyone.